Tell us about the cases when a person's life was destroyed in one day before your eyes. My stepfather's life collapsed the day his son, my brother, died. He couldn't cope with the loss, couldn't understand that we were all in the same pain, and plunged even deeper into drinking, became even more aggressive. A couple of years later, he made my mom choose him or me. I had to watch her make the most difficult decision. She left her husband, the love of her life. We didn't really talk to mom anymore. She made the right choice for the wrong reason. She told me straight out that she regretted having me. And my stepfather, as far as I know, still gets drunk and lives alone. My mother is single and lives regretting her life. As for me, I'm still trying to heal the scars, but overall everything's fine. And also, I periodically think about my mother's words. I don't take the blame that she tried to put on me. I don't feel like a mistake. I know that her feelings or problems are not my fault. I know I'm here for a reason, even if I don't fully understand why. One day, the director of the bank where I worked fired one of his executive managers. "Take your stuff, clear the table, you're fired." He made such a speech in front of all employees. The director was furious, and this guy was completely defeated. Later, the boss explained to all of us that this person had given his username and password to a friend from another branch. And she, in turn, used this username and others when she was running some kind of left-hand scheme with credit cards. The police tied her up, but there was no evidence against our fired poor guy, so they just decided to fire him on the spot. Obviously, in addition to losing his job, he was also blacklisted for all jobs related to banks and finance. An 18-year-old kid tried to steal a couple of bottles of Hennessy from my store. When I tried to stop him, he swung the bottle at me and even touched me, although I managed to dodge, so that the blow went tangentially and did not really hit me. As a result, he was accused of assault and robbery. The boy received a sentence under the article robbery with violence and lost custody of his baby. And always that f***ing Hennessy. I've seen 4 or 5 store robberies with booze. Well, such as grabbed and runs, and not everyone on the floor is a robbery. And people always grab bottles of this third-rate cognac. My buddy got caught with drugs. There was a raid and he was caught with the weight of weed, which could fill the floor of a minivan.
Most people measure weed in grams, someone in ounces, some are in pounds. But then there's this dude, he measures it in minivans.
I had a former colleague who was doing his residency in the Department of General Surgery. He had just started his 5th and final year of study. One day, in the midst of an operation, the police came to the hospital for him. He was dragged out of the operating room in a surgical gown and arrested on the spot in front of everyone. He had to walk around the hospital in disgrace, handcuffed, through all the residents and hospital staff. It turned out that his ex-wife had reported to the police, claiming that he had molested their children. The children also testified. We were all in complete shock. He was a very pleasant, cheerful guy. No one would have thought that he was capable of such a thing. And so it turned out. A few months later, it turned out that the testimony of the children was obtained under pressure from his ex-wife, who, in fact, fabricated everything. It wasn't the first time she had tried to frame him, but this was definitely the most successful case. The dude's career and life went to hell.
My older sister and I grew up best friends. One day, she didn't come home from work. I was 16 at the time, and she was 22. I woke up to my parents rattling all over the house, turning on the lights, making noise, and starting to panic. A little later, the cops called our house and said they had found my sister's car. She was standing on the street in the middle of the block, damaged and with the driver's side door open. They also found one of her shoes in the middle of the street. The next morning, the sister did not return. She worked in a bar. That night, she came out of work, and some guy followed her. He fitted into her side, and when she got out of the car to exchange insurance company numbers, he twisted her up, put her in his truck, and drove away. That night, he bullied and raped her. He held her captive all night and the next day. A day later, the sister managed to escape and ran to the nearest house, started banging on the door. The owners let her in and called 911. They said that the girl was attacked and beaten. She was taken to the hospital, from where they have already reached us. She had 2 broken ribs. Her whole face was bluish, black eyes, and scratches all over her body. After that, my sister was never returned to me. She survived the attack, but is now suffering from panic attacks and anxiety. She can't go outside alone. She drinks a lot and is afraid to move away from her mother to live alone. I don't know. I remember looking at her, how we laughed, watched movies, jumped on a trampoline, and she took us to eat at different eateries, how we listened to music together. Since then, my older sister has not returned. I will always love her, but this incident broke my heart. In one day, her life collapsed.
Yes, I witnessed and was a direct participant in this. My boss was removing and storing the CP. I was really hurt by this, and I talked to a friend who was a cop in a nearby town and asked him what I could do. He reported this to the chief of police in the city where it was happening. 2 days later, the most reputable cop I've ever seen walked through the door of our store and asked everyone for their identification. He handcuffed my boss and put him in a car. You should have seen his face when I was called to testify at the jury hearing. This whole story kind of puts me in a white light. You know, I've never told anyone about this except my wife, who supported my decision to become an unemployed student with a family and a mortgage. Thank you for your honest and kind words. And those of you who say I'm a hero. No, guys, I'm an ordinary person. The real heroes in this thread are those who have survived such tough situations and continue to live. Maybe it's worth reaching out to some of them and asking if everything is okay. Let them know that they are an important and valuable part of our community. There were still a lot of questions about how I found out about it. One of the victims of violence came up to me and asked for help. I helped. I knew a guy who found out within 24 hours that his wife, with whom he had been with for 7 years, was pregnant by someone else. Plus, she filed for divorce the same day and was going to keep their house for herself. She was the main person in charge of the mortgage contract because the guy had a weak credit history. It was tough to see all this. When I was about 13 years old, I was standing on a hill by the playground and chatting with my best friend. Suddenly, we saw a girl ride a bike. She wasn't wearing a helmet, which turned out to be extremely unfortunate because the bike slipped out from under her and she flew headfirst into the door jamb. I was too small to know for sure, but I'm pretty sure she died on the spot. Put on your helmet. I work at the hospital. It happened a few years ago. They said that victims with serious injuries were expected. A drunk driver crashed into a minivan carrying a grandfather, an aunt, and 3 children under 10 years old. The aunt survived. The children were taken to our hospital. One died on arrival. We fought for the lives of the other 2, but could not save them. They were left on life support until their parents came to say goodbye. I'll never forget how their mom used to sing lullabies to them. She lost all her children and her father in one day. I remember working with a kid, he was 16, when suddenly the bell rang. His father, mother, brother, and sister went to pick up the new family car. The father entered the turn at high speed and drove straight into the lower part of the bridge. In a matter of seconds, the guy lost his entire family, and the only reason he wasn't traveling with them was because he was at work. Once on a holiday, we organized a family gathering with all the relatives. Everyone has already arrived except my cousin. We all started joking about his lateness. His parents didn't stand by and giggled either. They texted him that they were very upset that he was late and all that. Anyway, it turned out that on the way here, someone hit him on the head and he died. Like in the movies, the police knocked on our door to notify the family of what had happened. I will never forget how this news broke us all mentally.